Hi, this is Melissa, your free range psychic. Today is February the 21st, 2021, and Mercury is no longer in retrograde today. It went direct yesterday. For those of you who keep track of Mercury being in retrograde, it's finally going forward. It's been so tragic with Texas and the energy grid going out because of the weather, and that's very Mercury retrograde, just kind of like hugely, and you know, the whole insanity of that government and being disconnected, except for I believe Beto's territory, as at El Paso, which is connected to other grids, but you know, Texas isn't as a whole, and that's just not a sustainable policy. I really pray it changes. I pray for the people in Texas. I think it's getting warmer now, but they have so much else to deal with huge, ridiculous electricity bills, and also water damage and lack of water. And but I believe in the people of Texas, and they will rebuild. They got to change their government, which I'm sure the majority of them know. But right now, you know, Texas would be blue except for voter suppression. That is what I believe. What was the biggest story of all of that? Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz fleeing to Cancun in Mexico to get away from the cold weather, and then being caught coming back, lying about it, throwing his kids under the bus, being outed by friends of his wife via texts that had showed that vacation was not how he described it, but it was something that his wife wanted to do, and they were going to, you know, have a getaway, a luxurious getaway, with no care or concern for the people that he serves. I started thinking, I wonder who else in the government was part of this insurrection. Was Ted Cruz part of the Civil War? Because he was part of this current insurrection for sure, but was he part of the original one? And my guides said yes, and I happened upon General George Pickett, who served with Robert E. Lee. I did not realize, by bringing up the generals of the Civil War, that I would run into a controversy with my subscribers, and I really apologize. I got a lot of comments about how Robert E. Lee would never reincarnate as Josh Hawley, although, you know, in reincarnation is not as straightforward as you would think, and we also have other lives to factor into the next one, so who knows. But I started to research more about Robert E. Lee, because apparently there are two different stories about him. One is that he really didn't want to fight in the war, but he out of loyalty to his state and to his culture, he chose the side of the South, and he was really a kind man. He hated slavery. And then I started researching, and this research is really based on current explorations into his letters, into stories about him, and also, interestingly enough, this missing piece of information that was missing for 70 years, that there was an indictment after the Civil War of Robert E. Lee and people like George Pickett and other Confederate soldiers. This was an indictment for treason, which is a serious crime. And the only reason that they were given amnesty was that they had gone to West Point with Ulysses S Grant, who said, okay, we're just going to put it behind us. Otherwise, there would have been a resolution to the Civil War, which there really never was, which I think probably is what led to this current outbreak of insurrection and white supremacy and the desire for the Confederacy to come back and run this country. In fact, I think that possibly a lot of the people involved are reincarnated from that time, kind of caught in that memory of defeat and desire to overturn the defeat. I found out that General Lee, he may have abhorred slavery, but only for, and this is from a letter he wrote, white people, or his race, because it was a distasteful, unpleasant kind of institution, but it was good for the slaves. It was good for black people because they had to be civilized, and he didn't know how long that would take because he really believed in the inferiority of the Africans who were brought over to be slaves here. And he thought there was no measurable time for that to happen because, you know, they needed so much work to become civilized like the white man. He supported slavery. He inherited slaves, I believe, from his wife's family, and in the will he was supposed to free them at the time of the death of Mary Custis's father. She was his wife, and she was actually a distant relative of George Washington, actually, interestingly enough. But he went to court to fight that. He also broke up families, which was something that Mary Custis, her family had resisted. They kept those families together, but Robert E. Lee had no problem in breaking those families up and selling them to disparate owners. He also didn't believe in equal rights, obviously, for black people. He also had similar beliefs and opinions about Native Americans and those of Hispanic origin. So I am so sorry if I am destroying or ruining a myth of somebody like General Lee, who it feels better, I think, to believe he was a good person, just kind of on the wrong side, than to see the truth. And it is the truth. It's in his letters. But I found this article, and I will tell you how this all came to be. And this can happen to anybody. And what I'm saying is there can be mythology about anybody, and then we all of a sudden find out certain things about them and go, oh, I'm going to do the best I can here. This is an article called The Cult of the Lost Cause and the Invention of General Pickett by Anne Banks. Confederate General George E. Pickett is remembered primarily for the attack launched by the division, or his division, on the third day of the Battle of Gettysburg, known to the history books as Pickett's Charge. In February of 1864, Pickett was in command of the Department of Virginia and North Carolina, under orders from Robert E. Lee to attack and capture New Bern, North Carolina. His attack failed. George Pickett, Major General George E. Pickett, was our family's marquee Confederate relation, distant cousin though he was. Every school child in America had heard of him thanks to the ill-fated infantry charge at the Battle of Gettysburg. For a long time, what I knew about him was pretty much what everyone learned in the 8th grade. Pickett's failed charge on July 3rd, 1863, was the turning point, the moment when the Confederates started to lose. The war, that is. In the peacetime that followed, victory went to the South. Defeated in battle, the Confederates and their descendants proved themselves unequaled in myth-making, casting their catastrophe of Gettysburg as an exhibition of individual gallantry and high glory, undertaken in a great but lost cause. These propagandists maintained, and still maintain, that the Civil War was never about upholding slavery. Instead, in this counter-narrative, the Confederate rebels were waging an honorable fight to protect and preserve the Southern way of life against Northern aggression. In the national imagination, Pickett's charge became the touchstone for all that was brave and noble and unflinching about the Confederate spirit. How did this happen? Aren't the victors supposed to write the history books? Yes, but after the rebel army surrendered at Appomattox, another more formidable force took the field. It was composed largely of women. The Ladies' Memorial Associations of the immediate post-war period morphed into the United Daughters of the Confederacy, founded in 1894. The objective of the Daughters was to promote a whitewashed and white supremacist interpretation of the, quote, late unpleasantness, unquote. Their weapons were reunions, speeches, monuments, model awarding, proclamations, quasi-religious rituals, such as wreath-laying ceremonies, and especially promoting textbooks whose purpose was to teach the true history of the antebellum South to future generations. The playbook for those activities originated with the honorary president of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, none other than General Pickett's third wife, the indefatigable LaSalle, quote-unquote, Sally Corbell Pickett. Like Pickett himself, Sally was a child of Virginia aristocracy. After his death, she devoted her lengthy widowhood to glorifying her late husband's reputation and to propagating the myth of the lost cause. She insisted on his heroism, patriotism, and historical importance. Once describing Pickett's charge as one of these deeds of arms that are immortal with imperishable glory, overshadowing all other events in martial history. After her husband died, Sally succeeded in reinventing herself as a professional Confederate widow, a popular writer, speaker, and champion of the Old South. She attended veterans reunions, parades, and monument dedications, signing autographs and becoming so popular that she was known as Mother Pickett. In lectures to Northern audiences, Sally told many a story of happy and contented slaves. As she once insisted, there was no word held in more reverential love and fear by the faithful Southern slave than the one word, master. On stage, she famously performed what she insisted was phonetically genuine slave dialect, carefully recorded by herself. The stories she told about her husband were no more credible than the slave dialect. As one writer observed, Sally Pickett's postbellum career as a writer and lost cause icon, quote, was marked with a curious mixture of charlantry and self-delusion. She faked an entire set of wartime correspondence from her husband, and she published it as the heart of a soldier as revealed in the intimate letters of General George E. Pickett, CSA. She even forged a letter from Abraham Lincoln singing the general's praises. Sally Pickett's tall tales of the lost cause live in some of the most popular modern accounts of the Civil War. Her fabricated letters from her husband are still in print and widely circulated, as well as cited. Shockingly, they have served as a primary source of mainstream presentations for the Civil War. Everything from Michael Shera's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel The Killer Angels to the movie's adaptation Gettysburg, to Ken Burns' epic public television documentary The Civil War. Just as Sally Pickett would have wished, Michael Shera depicts General Pickett as the archetypal Southern cavalier. The novel lays it on thick. I remember listening to the audio version and feeling so beguiled by Shera's description of Pickett as pertaining to his lusty exuberance. The general is gaudy and lovable, long-haired, perfumed, as he rides bronze-curled and lovely, regal and gorgeous on a stately mount. From a distance, he looks like a French king, all curls and feathers. Hopping out of the saddle sets his ringlets aflutter. Oh, those curls! William Faulkner fell for them even before Shera took notice. In a famous passage of Intruder in the Dust, he describes Pickett with his long oiled curls in the moments just before the charge. Shortly after this moment, following orders from Robert E. Lee, the flamboyant general sent his men across an open field straight into the hellish cannonade and volleys of rifle fire from the waiting Union forces. Half of Pickett's men were killed, wounded, or captured on the spot. Following the battle, Pickett wrote a bitter, finger-pointing after-action report that Lee then suppressed on the grounds of maintaining morale. A little more than 6 months later, the despondent Pickett, now in command of troops in North Carolina, ordered the hanging of 22 captured Union soldiers, POWs who were accused of having deserted from the Confederate Army. After the war, he narrowly escaped a war crime trial when Ulysses S Grant wrote an equivocal but ultimately effective letter in his support. Pickett was no longer the permanent boy. He retreated to Norfolk, Virginia, where he tried to support his family by selling insurance. He died at the age of 50 of a liver abscess, a defeated man. Sally Pickett, who was only 32 at the time of his death, set out to rehabilitate her late husband's reputation, casting him as the embodiment of all that was moral and superior about the Old South. As for the Daughters of the Confederacy, they are still much in the news. Starting in the 1890s, their campaign to glorify the mystique of the lost cause has involved erecting some 700 Confederate memorials, including the statue of Robert E. Lee on horseback that occasioned the deadly protest in Charlottesville, Virginia in August 2017. So I'm going to do a tarot reading like I did with Holly and Lee on the possibility that Ted Cruz is reincarnation of George Pickett. Let's see what we have here. I am using the Ciro Marchetti Gilded Tarot. We have a oracle reading at the end. After the tarot reading, again from the Whispers of Love. I love this book by Angela Hartfield. Okay. So this card, my guides chose to represent both Cruz, senator from Texas, and General George Pickett, Confederate general. The Hanging Man, which I only realized afterwards what they meant here, because to me it means like being caught or having a delay, and you just have to, kind of wait it out to be stuck. There's really nothing you can do about it. You have to just wait for it to pass. But the Hanging Man, of course, for Pickett, my guides say this referenced the crime that he was supposed to be indicted and tried for. Well, he was indicted, he just was never tried. And that was for hanging 22 Union soldiers. For Ted Cruz, this is Ted Cruz being caught by the Russians, by dark money, by Russian compromise. This is what my guide said. He's caught. He can't get out of this trap here. The Russians have him, and he's going to do whatever the Russians want him to do in the guise of a senator. And he's been caught for a long time. Above, Seven of Pentacles. This is, in this instance, according to my guides, also a card of compromise. This is temptation here, where you're willing to cross the whatever barriers you have of morality or even ethics or the law, if there's enough money in it for you, or there's enough of a transaction for you. And according to my guides, I didn't actually read this about Pickett. I haven't really studied him too much. I just found this out a day or so ago, that Cruz might be the reincarnation of Pickett. But Pickett was somebody who could be tempted by bribery, meaning that he would look the other way. If you gave him enough money or enough of a return, then he's going to pretend he didn't see that. For Ted Cruz, this is also Ted Cruz being very vulnerable to bribery, to being bought for if there's enough in it of a return in it for him. And again, this is just amplifying Russian oligarchs who have, like they allegedly have that we think for Kavanaugh, and various other members of the Trump organization, including Trump himself, right? They tempted Ted Cruz in to become a Russian agent. Maybe Compromat too, but I can't imagine. Oh my God, to think about like that. Who would want to see anything? I mean, we don't want to see it anyway. But so in the past, past life reading, this has to do with the past of the last reincarnation and the recent past of the present incarnation, and both involved in disastrous acts of insurrection here. An attempt to bring the government down, the standing government, to implement your own. So underneath is a Knight of Swords. This is General Pickett, being a general on a horse here, leading his men into battle, but also I think he had an impulsive nature and was very aggressive, believing in aggression as a means to an end. And for Ted Cruz, this is Ted Cruz also being a foot soldier for Trump, also believing in aggression. Here in this guise, he is rousing people to action to stage a coup, and he certainly was one of them, like Giuliani and Jim Jordan and others, still to this day refusing to admit that Biden is the real president and that Trump lost. So the future card, this is kind of the ending of the last person's life, and then this is coming up in the future for the recent incarnation, Five of Wands. My guides say that at the end of Pickett's life, he was just this querulous, cranky, unpleasant guy, and getting to a lot of arguments, not easy to be around. For Cruz, this is Cruz being on the defensive, throwing people under the bus in an internal fight with his party. And also, everybody's kind of attacking him at the moment for, and rightly so, for fleeing to Cancun instead of staying with his constituents and trying to help them. And he's just kind of fighting back. There's no accountability here, really. This is just being on the attack, and other people also going on the attack for him, as people attack him for what he did, for the abandonment of his post during a really essential time of need. The clarifying card, this is the card of the narcissist, the Five of Swords. Obviously, this is Pickett, this is the battlefield of wounded and dying men. And this is Cruz. And again, being a foot soldier for Trump. As well as, I want to say, a general also, somebody who's going to continue to lead people to disasters and to achieve his own rise to glory and fame. And, he wants to be president like Hawley. Very much still in this mode, and this is probably very characteristic of who he is. So the outcome card is death. So I asked my guides about this card. This card continually comes up for the Trump people. It came up for Holly in the last reading. I wanted to know more about this card, and they said, well, look at the Knight of Swords. Look at the horse here. So this is Cruz. Because of Cruz's attack against the government, this brings an end to his career. I asked about life, and they said no. And of course, for Pickett, his involvement in the Civil War also brought the end to his ambitions. Well, that was a history lesson. I don't know what you think about this reading. Let me know. Let me know if you want me to do more. I'm sure there's other members of the Civil War amongst that group. There have to be, because it is, just another version of it, really. Something that needs to be resolved, something that has to be worked out this time, or it could happen again. People have to be brought to justice. Let's look at our oracle card. The oracle card that was chosen for us is this one. And again, I'll show you the back of these cards, because I think they're beautiful. Love who you are. Love who you are. You are divine, delightful, and deserving of the wonderful things life has to offer. Be your own advocate. Believe in yourself. Love who you are, and the energy of love will help you realize your dreams. When was the last time you gave yourself a pat on the back or acknowledged that you love yourself? Working and having a good relationship with yourself will enable you to have a positive relationship with others. How you manage your self-worth is crucial to how you view the world and your place in it. Love begins and ends with you. How you treat and feel about yourself is of paramount importance. Love is contagious. When you are surrounded by people who are full of love, you may find it easier to love who you are. Okay, guys, at this point of the reading, I always like to remind you I am available for personal readings. Read anything in the past life, anything in the present, including past and future in this lifetime. I'm a medium, and I love to introduce you to your guardian angels. Please contact me if you want a reading. I left my information below in the description, and also it's at the end, very end of this video, but please stick around for the musical interlude. Everybody take care. It's still pretty cold here in Michigan. It's like 5 degrees out there, but we're going to get a thaw next week. I hope everybody is okay. Any of you in any part of the country that has been hit by this polar vortex and was not prepared for it, I'm praying for you. Okay, take care. Love you. See you next week. Bye.